Hello, everybody. Welcome to this edition of Transcendent. Transcendent is the weekly Facebook Live broadcast of San Antonio in black, white, and brown, also known as SABWB. What is SABWB? Thank you for asking that question. It is a leadership space where biblically worldview minded influencers from every race, position, and perspective converge for two main purposes. These are biblically worldview minded influencers from every race, from every position, and every perspective. So your race could be black, white, or brown, red or yellow, or blue or purple polka dot, doesn't matter. Uh, your position could be a housewife. You could be the board member or president of a Fortune 500 company. You could be a neighborhood association president. You could run for office. You could be in banking or sport, or no matter where you are. If you're biblically worldview minded leadership, SABWB is a place for you to converge for two main purposes. One is to discover where such biblically worldview minded people are in terms of the leadership spheres of our city, and then to build trust with one another. Because if we're going to do part two, which is to collaborate, we must do that on the basis of having built trust with one another. We started this more actively in our conference last year. Some friends of mine that run a top-notch organization here in our city came and led our convention SABWB conference goers through some team building exercises. We have continued that and will continue it because we realize we have to trust each other if we're going to collaborate, which is our second purpose, to collaborate both on the value and the implementation of principles that shape the culture of our city. Someone is going to shape the culture, and it should be those who are biblically worldview minded. So the city of San Antonio is in view. The scope or the realm that we want to impact is citywide. We want to see the city leaned in the direction of the things of God because it is a blessing to those people who are in the community of faith and a blessing to those who are not, because the universal principles of the kingdom are fixed. They're universal and they're beneficial to all. So it provides us with an opportunity to work together to see these things happen here in our city. So thank you for those of you who have joined me tonight. Thank you, Isaac, and others that are coming on. I appreciate your being here with me tonight. So that's what SABWB is. The way you can support us, of course, is by going to our website at sabwb.org. On the screen, the bottom right of your screen, my bottom right, maybe yours as well. You can get 6 ways there you can contribute or give to SABWB. You can give by way of Cash App. You can give by texting your gift amount to 84321. You can give by going to our website at sabwb.org. When you go to our website to give, please click the Become a Partner button, and it'll walk you through several other steps, very simple steps, and you'll become a monthly supporter of SABWB for as little as $10 per month. So thank you guys that have jumped on tonight. I really appreciate you. I really appreciate you doing that. While you're on, please like and share and comment. Like, share, and comment. That gets from what they tell me out there in the cyberspace world, that does something to the algorithms and lets what we're saying and sharing have a wider girth of sharing. So please do that. Like, share, and comment. Okay, so those are the ways you can give and partner and whatnot. You can do that also by buying our book. We published a book called The Footprints of a Prophet, written on the life of the late Bishop V.T. Williams, one of the most profound individuals I've ever met in my life. Simple man, nestled away in the villages of Jamaica, but God used him to shake nations literally. And I had the privilege of sitting with him and and speaking with him about how God had used him and the people that were that were recipients of the miraculous work of God. It's well documented in the nation of Jamaica. The aim of this book is to take it beyond the boundaries of that island nation and let the world know how God used a man to really change the course of life in the Western Hemisphere. There's no stretch. There's no hyperbole. Get your copy of The Footprints of a Prophet and read it. Get it from Zulon.com, Xulon.com, Zulon.com. We get the largest royalty when you buy it from there, although you can get it anywhere else. You can get it from anywhere else as well. You can get it at Barnes and Nobles. You can get it at Kindle. You can get it at wherever you buy books. But to go to Zulon is a bigger help for us. Zulon.com, and buy it from there. The other way you can help is with getting ready to change your coffee brand. Get ready to change your coffee brand to Bijizi Coffee. You'll be seeing more about that on this broadcast. Bijizi is a Rwandan word, and it means workday, because we have enlisted the partnership of people in Rwanda that has grown coffee fields for us. We've gotten several harvests back. We're going to turn that harvest back to Rwanda, and you can help us do that. We've gotten harvests. We've had them shipped from Rwanda here, got them trucked here to San Antonio from the port in Houston, and we're now ready to, in fact, have roasted some. We're now ready to start roasting a larger amount, but we need obviously money to pay the roasters to do that. And we also need some packing information, packing processes firmed up. We also need some work done on a website that will allow e-commerce to take place where that product is concerned. So we're still looking at about 10 grand to close that loop. It has been grown, it's been shipped, it's here. Some of it has been roasted. In fact, some of it has even been now in these little small Keurig packs. But we're trying to get it rolled out in a manner to continually supply you, the coffee drinker, with Bijizi coffee. And when you drink it, while you're drinking it, you're helping farmers halfway around the world. You're supporting small business here on this side of the pond, and you're helping to minister to ministries like SABWB. So get prepared to, and by the way, it's organic coffee, grown without chemicals, and it's premium coffee. It's been tested there and here. Can't wait for you to get a cup full of it, because you're going to get hooked on it. And your drinking coffee is a great and incredible blessing. Doors have opened where the coffee thing is concerned, many doors, but we do need your partnership, your financial help to close that loop and keep moving. So that's us. That's how you can help. Tonight, Black History Month, Part 3 on traumatization. Before I get into that, I want to take you to the fields of Rwanda and let you see. I'm standing in these clearly handmade coffee beds. I have a handful of cherries in my hand. I call them beans. They're not beans in that form. They're cherries. But you will be able to see the coffee fields from where these cherries are gathered, and you'll see the beds where they are spread and dried and made ready to get here with you. So let's go to the fields of Rwanda right now, and I'll be right back right after this. All right, I'm here in Rwanda, and we're up in the coffee farms right now. So I've been telling you about the upcoming Be Easy Coffee organic premium coffee. And these are beans that I have in my hand. These are brand new beans. There's already a harvest already in place. These are just the early parts of the second harvest. And these beds that you see that are now empty will be full of organic premium coffee beans. And you have an opportunity to get a bag of Be Easy coffee for yourself. And we're going to work, of course, as I said before, on the San Antonio blend. for SABWB. You'll be able to get your coffee mug and sip premium organic coffee. I told you it was coming, and it's on the way. And yes, it is on the way, and I'm so grateful. It is on its way, and I'm grateful that your partnership allows us to jump right in with that process and keep it moving. So thank you so much for it. All right, so tonight's subject matter is part three of Black History Month. Uh, we talked about, in the first part, we talked about victimization. Second part, we talked about marginalization. Tonight, we're going to talk about traumatization. 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 We're going to talk about trauma. Um, we established that there has been no people group in North America, in the United States, that has had a targeted and sustained attack against them as a people group, none to be compared to the African American community. From 1619 to 1863, 244 years of brutal slavery that victimized the African American people in untold and in unprecedented ways on this soil. A sustained, targeted effort, identifiable to an identifiable people group because of the melanin in our skin. Um, we stand out, can't be missed. Uh, Whereas other people groups, though they are different in culture and in practice, they are similar in appearance. But with the African American population, the similarity in appearance just didn't exist. So we could be easily targeted and victimized, and were, for 244 years. I'm not going to rehash all of that. I'm just saying there's a whole bunch of stuff that has been perpetrated in a sustained and targeted way against the African American community, victimizing that community. Now, there's one thing to be victimized, it's another thing to become a victim. We're going to deal with some of that in this notion of trauma tonight. But the second thing is, after the war, the Civil War ended in 1865. In 69, Ulysses S. Grant released soldiers into the South, the antebellum. The word antebellum means post-Civil War. The antebellum South, troops were released from the North to make sure that former slave owners did not return their newly freed slaves back to the same plantations and governing them with the same austere hands and cruel and insensitive hands that they were doing to begin with. That lasted from 1869 to 1877. That period is called the period of Reconstruction. Actually, Reconstruction is figured from 1865 to 1877, a 12-year period. But really, the force behind Reconstruction didn't begin until President Ulysses S. Grant ordered troops to come into the South. Because although the South had lost the war and slavery was over, slave owners sought to enslave the African population again, because there were things done to make sure that they couldn't survive very well outside of the plantation setup. They were not taught to read. They were forbidden to be taught to read. Their families were disintegrated, and even in the midst of that, the black family still held together in this nation, incredibly so. Even after having been ripped apart by being sold like they were cattle and property, which is what they were considered. And I told you that to formulate that for the non-black, for the European to get a posture in his mind, we call them white people today. The reason they got a posture in their mind that way is because in 1869, I told you several things happened. Plessy versus Ferguson happened. The one in 1857, the Dred Scott decision That happened. If you want to refresh yourself, just go back and look at the last two on victimization and marginalization. You'll be able to see some of that. But tonight I want to talk about the result, what is, and remains the generational result of victimization and marginalization is this word called traumatization. And I'm glad to tell you that for every one of these stages that the African American population has endured on these shores, there is a biblical narrative for it. The biblical narrative, as you know from the book of Exodus forward. Exodus story begins in Genesis when Joseph is sold by his brothers into slavery, and God uses Joseph to become the head of the nation of Egypt only under the Pharaoh, and save many nations alive and many people alive, including his own people from Canaan, from starvation because of a dream that God gave him. Well, the children of Israel moved down, and Israel was Jacob's name, having been changed from Jacob to Israel. He moved his family down into Egypt, and at Joseph's behest, and they lived in the land of Goshen, and they survived there under very favorable conditions until their leader arose that knew not Joseph, the Bible says, and then the bondage, the hard bondage, began to be laid on the children of Israel. They began to be victimized, just as we talked about before. Victimization through slavery is not an uncommon saga that is played throughout many cultures across the world. I am not I'm not making the claim that the African American culture is the only culture that has gone through that. In fact, just go back and listen to the other two. I won't have to rehash so much of it because I want to get to this thing called traumatization tonight. Dodie, I'm glad you're on. I'm glad to see you. Julie, thanks for jumping on as well. Chuck, thanks for looking in tonight as well. Like, comment, and share, guys, as you do that. I'm told that affects the algorithm, and our messaging goes further and wider to other people when you do, and I think it's important for people to know. Important for people to know the things that we're going to be discussing over these weeks. Okay. Let me turn that notification bell off. Okay. There we go. Now it's on silent. So let's start looking into some of this, because we do have parallels of what has happened in the African American community to what happened in the Jewish community in the scripture. I'm aware that arguments are made, and the whole Black Israelite thing and all of that. The Black Israelite motion is no different than what happened in theological circles in America for a vast amount of time, called replacement theology. Replacement theology really dismissed God's covenant with his people, with the Jewish people, and replaced the church with that. That's why it's called replacement theology. Black Hebrew mentality is the same. And yet I will tell you, it's just the same horse, a different color, so to speak. Yet I will tell you, there is something about the revelation of the Hebrew people that the world must know before the time of the end, that it does not now know, or it doesn't yet embrace. It knows it, but it doesn't embrace it in most parts. And that is that the nation, the Hebrew nation, is a multicultural nation. It is a multiracial nation. There are even sects of Jews. Some will understand the terms Ashkenazi Jews. Some will understand Ethiopian. Some will understand the other adjectives escape me right now, but there's something that will come about to embrace this multiracial and the multicultural aspect of the Jewish people that will be a blessing to the world. The Romans tells us that that revelation will set some things in course that will be like life from the dead. And I can't wait for all that to happen. It's not happened yet, but we have parallels with what has happened with the Jewish people in Egypt to what has happened with the people of African descent here in America. And so go back and look at victimization and marginalization, because tonight I want to talk to you about traumatization. Trauma. What is trauma? Write it down somewhere, make a note of it. Trauma is a deeply distressing or disturbing experience. Trauma is a deeply distressing or disturbing experience, which a person can have. They can have a traumatic experience, and that trauma affects them emotionally, it affects them psychologically, it could even affect them physically. Uh, it has profound physical and emotional and psychological impact on a person or on a people group. That's what trauma is. Trauma is something that has happened deep inside you. It is distressing and it is disturbing, and it can have impact on an individual's psychology. It can have impact on his mentality. It can have impact on his physical body. And that trauma so goes in. It's sort of like taking and uh, putting your emotions like eggs in an egg beater and turning that egg beater on, and brrr, everything is scrambled. You no longer have things in the order that you once had them emotionally and intellectually. And because trauma has scrambled the signals, and you can be impacted by the trauma through shock and denial and unpredictable emotional outbursts and flashbacks and strained relationship, even physical symptoms in your body can be manifestations of the fact that you're traumatized. Now, here's what I will submit to African America tonight, people of African descent living in America. You're traumatized. And while the trauma, the deep, distressing, and disturbing event may not have happened to you personally, the effect of it has passed down generationally. I told you that during the time of our marginalization that there's something creeped up in the 20s and 30s called redlining. This is literally banks and financial institutions, and later the U.S. government drew red lines around certain geographical areas where black and brown people congregated. And they made some decisions that were designed to keep those specific areas oppressed and to prime them for the government to come in and create housing for them. We know them today to be ghettos or tenement housing in many cities across our nation. So what I'm saying to you is something that you can still go to Detroit and Chicago and New York and San Antonio and Houston and New Orleans and Los Angeles and Washington. You can go where there are large populations of people in metroplexes around the nation, and see that this redlining that began to take place in the 20s and 30s. So they outlined this area where black and brown people, mostly black at that time, congregated, and they decided that they, being those who held the money strings, that they were not going to let out loans for people who live in those districts to buy homes, or they were not going to let money out in the business community for those who wanted to plant businesses in those districts. They would not lend them money to do so. They made it difficult to see those communities go forward. Now, what has happened, and of course in 1933, the government got involved in it with the Federal Housing Authority, and they came in and started building affordable housing in those same red line districts. And that affordable housing became the ghettos and the tenement housing and uh, the courts here in San Antonio, known as the courts. These are government housing, and in order to get into the government housing, it was targeted primarily at the minority female, and the female could get a place leased to her for almost nothing, but she had to jump through some uh, family destroying practices in order to qualify. In other words, she could not have a male in the home with her. If she had a male in the house, she wouldn't qualify for the subsistence that was coming from state. So you can see that that was an intentional strategy, excuse me, released on the population to create these kinds of environments that you and I still see today. And some of them, perhaps some of you who are listening to me, you're still living in the midst of that right now. You're living out what the government chose to do, the government and the money sector, the banking industry, chose to do to redline certain districts. And then the government moved in and began to do, you see, affordable housing seemed like it was a handout. It wasn't a hand up. It was a handout to those who were struggling, couldn't get it together for whatever reason. They were unable to provide for themselves. So the government provided housing for them. And the mother would now have a place to raise her children. And so the mother's affection was pulled away from the man of the house, or pulled away from the male species, except for his ability to impregnate her again, because when she got impregnated again, the state would accommodate her illegitimate pregnancy with more money. These sustained and purposeful attacks caused the African American population in many places to sink in their level of expectation, because they had been victimized 244 years, and because they had been marginalized an additional 100 years. So now we're looking at 3.5 centuries of continual attack leveled against the African American community in this country to drive them into oblivion. Why such energy? Why such purposeful malintent against a people group? That question is worth exploring. We're going to do a little bit of that in this process, but it's worth you exploring. The bigger part of this thing that we're doing during Black History Month this month is to try to let you see so that what has happened, so that we can then have we can exercise the value, we can exercise the impetus to get out of it because we understand it. And if you're a non-white community, you can advocate for those that have been targeted, intentionally targeted and oppressed. You can advocate from a point of knowledge, because I know how the argument sometimes goes. Maddie, thanks for jumping on tonight. You're such a precious lady, Maddie. I thank the Lord for you. So as we begin to kind of unpack this stuff tonight, you'll start to see what difference perhaps you can make, because it didn't happen overnight. That was 244 years of victimization. That was another 100 years of marginalization. And someone might say, well, didn't the civil rights fix that? Do you think that legislation can actually fix the heart? Now, thank God for it. It was Dr. King who said, when asked about that very same question, can legislation fix a heart? He said, no, legislation cannot tell a man to love me, but legislation can stop him from legally shooting me. Legislation can't make him love me, but legislation can make it illegal for him to do unjust harm to me. So here we are. We're in the midst of what has happened. We're 3.5 centuries in now by the 60s. And I got to tell you, those of you who are old enough to have remembered and lived through the 60s, actually, I was born in December 31st, 1960. I was born the last day of that year. But things were happening well before then, because I was telling you about marginalization. That began to happen in the late 20s, and in 1933 with the Federal Housing Authority, the government got involved in corralling a people group and serving that people group under the guise of helping. When the thing that broke the African American family down most was not slavery, although it was bitter and inhumane. The thing that broke the black family down most was the war on poverty. The war on poverty. Many, Don, thanks for looking on tonight. Many have heard the uh, Roosevelt, our president, I think it was Roosevelt, making the statement about giving he used the N word, give these ends all of these benefits, and they'll be voting for us for the next 100 years. Yeah, that's been recorded. His voice is captured on tape saying, "Yeah, let's give these ends all these benefits." Niggers is the word, the N word. Let's give these niggers all these benefits, and they'll be voting for us for the next 100 years. That has to do with providing or taking advantage of a people that is traumatized. Our last notion that we're going to look at next week is politicization. So we have been victimized, we have been marginalized, we've been traumatized, and we have been politicized. We have to see it, understand it, come out of it. See it, understand it, and come out of it. And there are pathways out that have been constructed for us by people who have borne the weight of this responsibility on their shoulders. And it seems as though their voice in the black community have grown silent, and we have forgotten the price paid. We haven't forgotten men like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We haven't forgotten men like Malcolm X, but there are many others that have written on these things and given great insight concerning them. We have forgotten, we don't even know who they are, and we forgot what they said. Well, you're going to come into the knowledge of some of that next week as we talk about being politicized and how we come out of this entrapment. So let me go back now real quick and talk about more about this traumatization. Redlining, FHA, the construction of housing, the Federal Housing Authority, the moving in of mostly minority females into those housing units. They knew that the black male would not be far from his black female. Although they made it against the rules for her to take the black man in, they knew that he was going to talk her into it, and that she would use the force of the state, that the black woman would use the force of the state to manage her black man. If he didn't pay the child support for the children that they together created, she could put him on child support payments, and if he didn't make them, he would go into jail. Or if he became violent with her or unruly in the house, she could call the police and he would be put out. Listen, what I'm trying to tell you is that these dynamics did not happen by accident. It is a result of a people who have been traumatized. What is trauma? A deeply distressing or disturbing experience that brings harm. long-term harm on the psychological, the mental, and even the physical bodies of a person or people group. Now, when you have been traumatized as a people group, because the result is like federal housing and projects, you pass on that trauma to the preceding generations because they're born into it. They're born into the effects of trauma, and they perpetuate it. They start perpetuating. They pass that on to their sons and their daughters until you have generations living, generations of people, generations of families not not having home ownership. Home ownership is a key to wealth building, but generationally, that mother has been used as a tool to create an atrocious unmarried birth rate in the African American community. Some say that it is now as high as 7 out of 10 children born in the African American community are born to single parent mothers. 7 out of 10 born in the African American community are born into a single parent household. That was purposeful. That was intentional. And it's not until we begin to see and recognize it and break with the triggers, the traumatic triggers that we have received, and start taking personal responsibility, take advantages of some of the changes that have taken place, take full advantage of them. Let me just say this about DEI, because I see so much of it now that DEI is taken out of businesses and corporations are dropping their DEI. Let me just tell you this, African American, it was never for you to begin with. Why are you screaming about DEI? It was never for you. It was actually written to give advantage to the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender community. Yeah. It wasn't written for your benefit. It wasn't targeted at you. So don't defend something that wasn't written for your benefit anyway. Screaming about you're not a DEI hire. You had that job before DEI was ever a thing. You were put in place before that was ever an issue. You got on your grind. You did your thing. You believed God. You worked hard. If you didn't believe God, you worked hard for it, and favor was granted unto you. That had nothing to do with DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Here's what I say to you. This was in our conference last year. I think it was last summer. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, as they are defined in this DEI movement that was in force until this new administration came along. That was in force, by definition, was a direct affront to your Christian morals concerning what Jesus said in Matthew 19, that in the beginning, what did it say in the beginning? That God made them male and female. DEI flies in the face of that. DEI does not believe that you can, as a minority, can be given equal opportunity and come out with the outcomes that you desire. So they say they're pushing for equity. Equity is equal outcomes. No one should have the equal outcome of someone who has worked hard for someone who's not working at all. No, it's equality, not equity. Equality means everyone having the same opportunity. Now, what you do with that opportunity is up to you. Not everyone having the same outcome. Equity deals with, by definition, equity deals with outcome, equal outcomes. You should not have equal outcomes without you putting in equal effort. You should not have equal outcomes without you taking equal pathways. Diversity, equity, and inclusion was never meant for you. Inclusion is a direct affront to the idea that excuse me, that Jesus is that the Reverend Patrick Jones? I love that guy. He's a stalwart man. Thank you for looking in tonight. Inclusion is a direct affront to your believing that Jesus Christ, as he said in John chapter 14, verse 6, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Inclusion has to do with you moving away from the exclusivity that Christ himself brings to the table of salvation. You're more aligned in the inclusion area with those who believe that all of these so-called prophets and messengers of God have all of these multiple ways to bring you to the one God. You're kind of Oprahized in the inclusion area. Diversity, equity, and inclusion was never written for you. It was never intended for you, African American. It was written to give advantage to the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer LGBTQ plus community, so that they would have equal footing using the law to make institutions and organizations bend to their whim. I saw today, there's a 55-year-old man who now identifies as a 6-year-old girl. He identifies as a 6-year-old girl, and that joker's found some parents to adopt him as a 6-year-old girl. Yeah, a husband and a wife adopted a 55-year-old man that identifies as a 6-year-old girl. He's now got a household. He walked away from 6 kids and a wife to become a 6-year-old girl. This is what diversity, equity, and inclusion does in a community. There's no more boundaries. There's no more established boundaries around which you can build family and gain identity. Now anybody can be anything. It is not so. So please stop crying over DEI. It wasn't written for you to start with. It was written to advance a cause that is so ungodly and so unbiblical that you shouldn't have anything to do with it at all. You should. In fact, Scripture says those things should not even be spoken of in the mouth of a believer. So let me get back to trauma, because I want us to understand how we have been traumatized. And look in the scriptures with me. I'm in Exodus, the 13th chapter. Now, you know that in chapter 12, they've come out. They've the Passover is established. They've come out of the plagues. God has released the plagues on Egypt, coming against Egyptian gods, showing outright that they are not in control, that God himself is in control. He opens the sea. He brings the children of Israel across on dry land. They're now on their way to the land of promise under the hand of Moses. But they're only out just a little while. In Exodus chapter number 14, that Pharaoh says, I don't know what got into us. We've let all of our slave labor go. Like these people that are talking about, this is insulting. It's people are insulting when they don't know they're being. Somebody said, if you put all these people out, these illegal immigrants out of America, who's going to work the farms? Who's going to clean our houses? Who's going to pick take the jobs that Americans don't? That's insulting. If you pull the illegals out, who's going to clean my toilets? Who's going to clean my house? Who's going to reap the harvest out of the fields? Oh, okay, so let's keep them here and keep abusing them. Let's keep them here and keep paying them under the table. because the reason they're doing it is because you don't want to hire somebody that you would have to pay a decent living wage to do it. So yes, they're here at our advantage. So let's just keep them. You see how bigoted you can be and not know it? Okay, so I only have about 15 more minutes with you. Pastor Carolyn, thank you for jumping on tonight. Uh, so, so here we are. Now, we're in this Exodus chapter 14. They've come into a new uh, place of freedom, and Pharaoh says, "You let all those people go. You let all of our housekeepers go. All of our toilet cleaners go. You let all the people who were bringing the food from the field. You let all of them go. What was wrong with us?" And when Pharaoh drew nigh, the children of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians marched after them, and they were sore afraid. And the children of Israel cried out unto the Lord, and they said unto Moses, "Because there were no graves in Egypt, hast thou taken us away to die in this wilderness?" These are people who are traumatized. They were being beaten, ill-treated. They were being uh, killed. The children were being tossed into the river. And here they're crying out to Moses, "Didn't we tell you?" They go on to say, "Wherefore hast thou dealt thus with us to carry us forth out of Egypt? Is not this the word that we did tell thee in Egypt, saying, Let us alone that we may serve the Egyptians?" That staying, don't you know that staying in tenement housing and drawing a welfare check, don't you know that's easier than me to have to get out here and get some education and get a job, or create a job and entrepreneurial skills, take the risk of it failing? No, I don't want to do that. No, leave me alone. Let me and my generation stay right here in this tenement housing and keep this perpetual thing going over and over again and become a drag to this community because they owe us anyway. They traumatized us. This stuff is this is wow. But what we are going through as a people is not uncommon to what went on in the Egyptians once they were pulled out of slavery, pulled out of bondage. They would rather have the bondage than have the responsibility to begin to build themselves as a people. And there are some black people in America today that would rather have the bondage than take the responsibility to build up ourselves as a people. When we are raw, we are full to the brim with talent, with ability, with expertise, communicative skills, uh, 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 superior athleticism, uh, uh, intelligentsia. We have everything we need, but it's easier to point your finger at the white man and say, "It's that white man's fault that I can't get ahead. It's that white man's fault. It's that guy's fault. He'll never give me a break. They don't ever." Come on, shut up. Just shut up. You have a God whose call and promise it is to you that if you're called upon him, he will answer you, and he will give you favor with who you need favor with. He'll cause you to build, perhaps even in the limits of your own community. You can be raised up as a people who are prosperous and beautiful and proud. You don't have to rely on somebody else, Black America. You don't have to. Harry Belafonte was one of the funders of the civil rights movement, and I challenge you to look this up on Facebook, because there's a Facebook clip out there where uh, he's talking about having a conversation with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. about 5 days before he was shot in Memphis. And he says that they had just ended a poor person's campaign meeting, and they had come in, and Martin was kind of sullen in the corner and kind of not participating. And Harry asked him, What is it, Martin? Why are you troubled? And he talked about the movement. He says the civil rights movement is. I think we've done enough. We're going to get the vote. Civil rights is going to pass, and the Poor People's Campaign is moving along well. I think we're going to make the necessary headway there. And Harry asked him, then what troubles you? Here's what he said. Here's what he said. Martin said 5 days before his death. Martin said, I think that we are trying to integrate into a burning house. He said, America has lost its moral compass. And when you lose your moral compass, you have nowhere to lead your people except into a burning abyss. And we have pushed our people to get involved with that. Look it up. Look it up. Traumatization makes us easy pickings to be politicized, and we have been politicized. I'm going to talk about that next week. But it's the trauma. It's the trauma that makes you want to go back to Egypt. I read you 14. Let me read you out of 16. This is Exodus 16, verses 1 and 2. And they took their journey from Elim, into the congregation of the children of Israel came into the wilderness of Shin, which is between Elim and Sinai. And the 15th day of the second month after their departing out of the land of Egypt. 15th day of the second month. So they're a month and a half out. They are 1 month and a half out from this bondage and slavery. And the whole congregation of Israel, the children of Israel, murmured against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. And the children of Israel said unto them, would to God, listen to this, would to God we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the flesh pots, and when we did eat bread to the full. At least I had a TANF card. At least I had a Star card. At least I could take this down to the corner store and get me something to eat. We could have bread to the full. So I got my card. Rather than suffering through to become a people who are truly independent and self-sufficient, let's sit by the flesh pots. When you're willing to sit by the flesh pots of Egypt, rather than take the opportunity to grow as a people, to learn, to experience, you're traumatized. If you would rather your TANF card than a small business loan, you're traumatized. If you'd rather a tenement house that you can grow your children up in and they can get on the system than home ownership, where you got to keep the yard mowed and the trees trimmed and the house painted, you're traumatized. Okay, so in the book of Exodus and the book of Numbers, there is a number of places. Eric, thanks for jumping on tonight. And Olga, thank you for looking in as well. You will see in Exodus and in Numbers, you walk right through them and you will see that the children of Israel were freed, but they didn't want to be free. Because freedom meant too much responsibility. Freedom came with too much work. We have been victimized, 244 years of it. We have been marginalized, another 100 years of Jim Crow. It has left us traumatized as a people. And on the backs of our trauma, the politicians came in. And the politicians came in knowing how to manipulate us as a people group. Because these politicians they not only watched this victimization and marginalization and trauma, they were the architects behind it. They were the architects behind that 244 years. They were the architects behind Jim Crow and the rest of it. Now they know how to just pick the right sores, hit the right sore spots of trauma say the right things, give you this sense of false hope, which they've been doing for 60 years now or more, almost a generation and a half, with no significant change, and yet you will defend it to the hilt. Come on. Come on. Come on. There's got to be another way out. There is. There is. There is a biblical prescription for African American people who've been traumatized, any other person from any race. But I'm doing this, pointing it at my brothers and sisters of African descent, because we play such a vital role in the fulfilling of the dream of this nation, the dream that God gave Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. August 28th, 1968, I think it was. This I Have a Dream speech. There are keys embedded in the prophetic voice that spring from this word that helps us as a people get beyond blaming somebody else, get beyond self-destructing, embracing things that cause us to self-destruct. When I get to politicization next week, you'll see that the politics have caused us to actually embrace the thing that is killing us. We have embraced our own genocide at the behest of politicians. It's crazy. It's crazy because we're traumatized as a people. We don't have to remain so. We can come out. We can come out. We can come out. I'm telling you, we can come out. So I want to thank you for jumping on here with me tonight. Joe, thanks for looking in as well. Like, comment, and share, please, because this needs to get out to others who can see it and become fired up by it. All right. This is, by the way, this is our those of you who went on the Freedom Walk with us. We didn't have it this year. We will have it January of 2026. This is our Freedom Walk shirt. It says, darkness can't drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. So we have to learn to walk in light and love as a people, and look to God, our Creator, to help us. He will help us, and He has been. Oh, has He? Has He been helping us? But it's time that we as a people start to realize that and move in a corporate sense to see African American people of African American descent play our part in the great American dream, because America can't be what it needs to be until we are. Listen, I know that's a bold statement, but America cannot be what it needs to be until you and I, as African American people of African American descent, are what we should be. Our destiny is tied up in the destiny of this nation, and the destiny of this nation is tied up in our destiny. All right. Love y'all big. Have a great night. We'll see you here next Tuesday for politicization, victimization, marginalization, traumatization, politicization. That's a mouthful. We'll talk about it next week. Love you big. Have a great night now. Bye-bye.